Cheboy will be in charge of today's proceedings. Remember, Wednesday is a day allocated for private members' motions and bills, and there are 5 motions that are lined up today for debate. Mathare Member of Parliament, Honorable Anton Tomoloch, has filed a motion that urges the government to declare youth unemployment as a national disaster and further establishes a national youth fund of at least 5% of the national revenue collected each year to be administered by an authority or commission for purposes of youth empowerment and employment. That aware that 75% of Kenyans' population is under 35 years of age and that overall unemployment among youths is at 55%, cognizant of the government's plan in the Big Four agenda aimed at creating 1.3 million manufacturing jobs by 2022, appreciating that Article 260 of the Constitution of Kenya and the Public Finance Management Act, National Government Affirmative Action Fund, Regulations 2016, supports the affirmative action for the youth, aware that in the Appropriation Act 2018, the Youth Empowerment Program was only allocated a total sum of 7.3 billion Kenyan shillings. Therefore, the National to afford security and employment of rural households, further aware that the recurrent drought being experienced in many parts of the country has adversely affected this sector, leading to a worrying drop, which is designated to, among other things, address the challenges that agricultural producers face when there are large production shocks such as droughts and floods, with focus on life insurance and maize and wheat insurance. The motion has been filed by Kilifi North Member of Parliament, Honorable Owen Baya. Well, I can see there seems to be a quorum, but that can only be confirmed by Deputy Speaker Honorable Moses Cheboy, who will be in charge of today's proceedings as members discuss motions and motions. The event is being transmitted live.
Order number 1, administration of oath. Order number 2, communication from the chair. Order number 3, messages. Order number 4, petitions. Order number 5, papers.
Chair, Administration, Honorable Koinanga, are you ready? You are supposed to table some report.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Speaker. Yeah, Honorable Speaker, I beg to lay the following paper on the table of the House today, Wednesday.
Where is that paper? No, but I have not even seen it. I mean, even as you lay the paper, you see, I know you are holding one. Do you have another copy?
I have, yeah.
Okay. Next order.
Order number 6, notices of motion.
First, before even you proceed to the next, can you first sign the document? That is the reason why I was saying probably.
The paper, to lay the paper, if it is not ready, you can do it in the afternoon.
Yes, that particular bit about being ready or otherwise is not captured in the standing orders. So therefore, I use standing order number 1 to allow him to be ready. Now, but of course the rules have not been changed. And that is why I asked, because I understand this is a very serious report that really needs to be worked on quickly. And therefore, that's why I gave him some leeway. But it's now fine. Now proceed, Honorable.
Mrs. Ann Makori, chairperson. 2, Mrs. Doreen Nkatha Mudhaura, member. Mrs. Fatuma Mohammed, member. Dr. Walter Owen Ogoni, member. Mr. Jonathan Londonpool Ntipalei, member. Honorable Waiganjo John Mureithi, member. Mrs. Pradsexidence Chepkoech Tororei, member. And Dr. Jimmy Mutuku Mwithi.
Through the Ministry of Education to establish a special needs unit in every primary and secondary school. Will as many as of that opinion say aye? Aye. Many as of a contrary opinion say nay? The ayes have it. To be placed after the Coconut Farmers Inn in the 5th line. And also by deleting the words Kilifi County in the 14th line and substituting thereof with the word counties in the coastal region. Now, I think what Tayari should do is to reply and probably
about the coast region instead of Kilifi County. Therefore, we agreed as members from the coast region that we bring an amendment and delete the words Kilifi County and instead add the coast region. And by bringing this amendment,
and B, by deleting the words Kilifi County in the 14th line, substituting thereof with the words counties in the coastal region. Will as many as of that opinion say aye?
Itonga, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving an opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, agriculture is a main economy of this country, and the place so that we can develop serious coconuts and look like other countries who farm coconuts very seriously, especially in the Far East. You find countries live and their livelihood is purely on coconut, they even export. The coconut tree is very useful in very many aspects. First, of nutritional value. Secondly, every bit of a coconut tree has one use or another, including even firewood and or be used as a form of energy. And there is no single bit of the coconut plant which goes into waste at any one particular time. Whether people can feed on it, it can be used to make coconut wine. To congratulate the honorable member, Stephen Tayari. You know that we support this region so that the farmers can make good use of this particular product. And the most important is to make sure this is in the budget. In the agricultural sector, there is an agricultural committee, is to lobby with the budgetary provision so that a certain amount of monies are allocated, whether in supplementary or future budgets, so that these farmers can rekindle and the ones who do the seedlings, which are very, very hard to grow, can be able to develop sufficient seedlings, and that we can cover as much land as possible with coconut trees in the coastal region. It will even change the climate because you know these trees are big and they grow quite a number. And not only Kilifi, the whole coastal region.
You know, the members that have registered interest to speak, please note that you can only speak to this motion once. So, and you know, members are known to be very honest. Although I have my record as well. You can. No, order, Honorable Madime. You can support it. The decision is already made. The House has already made a decision on the amendment, so it does not exist now. Yes, yes, very well, Honorable Madime. Honorable Kingola Macau, member for Mavoko. I suppose you haven't spoken.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I haven't spoken about it. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion, particularly knowing that coconut is a very difficult tree to plant. Mr. Speaker, for a coconut tree to grow and maybe start producing, it takes 6 to 7 years. And Mr. Speaker, even the process of planting a coconut tree is so natural that most of it is naturally grown. However, Mr. Speaker, we know the best places to plant it or to grow naturally is on the coastal lines. Mr. Speaker, I agree with the move of the motion that the government has to take this serious by compensating the farmers, given that the drought took away most of the trees, and of course it is their livelihood. Mr. Speaker, when you look at the benefits of of coconut, they range from oil to building materials to making soap, to making local brews. And Mr. Speaker, for the coast people, the coconut is like coffee in central and eastern provinces. So, Mr. Speaker, I have no doubt. In fact, the inclusion of the amendment is so good that it took care of the whole coastal region. And I'm sure that's why, Honorable Madime, so that we cannot all be white-collar job seekers, but we can put the youth in the agricultural sector. And we begin it by addressing such a motion. Mr. Speaker, you realize sometimes I like it when in this house that we support everything that comes in Kenya. We don't have to look at coconut as coastal produce. But Mr. Speaker, I know the drought is across Kenya, but we are here supporting the support of coconut farmers in the coastal region. Because, Mr. Speaker, if we were to be selfish, I'll speak about our cows, our maize, that also needs to be compensated or supported. But, Mr. Speaker, because this motion has come on time, I think it's important for us to support as a House that the government looks into supporting these farmers because we need to promote the coconut produce. So, Mr. Speaker, I support and I want to thank the mover of the motion. Thank you very much.
Next, shall we have Honorable Kamoti?
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunipa nafasi hii. Kwanza kabisa namshukuru Mheshimiwa aliyeleta mswada huu, Mheshimiwa Owen. Ni mswada ambao kweli wakati wake umefika. Na Bwana Spika, nataka niambie nyumba hii ya kwamba jimbo la Pwani ndio jimbo ambalo kwa sasa tunaweza sema halina mmea ambao umeorodheshwa kama mmea wa kuleta ama kuboresha uchumi wa nchi hii. Kwa kimombo wanasema cash crop. Hakuna. Na hiyo inasikitisha sana, imefanya mpaka ukulima umedorora kwa sababu si mkorosho, si mnazi. Hii ni mimea ambayo wakulima wanapozingatia kilimo chake hawaoni faida. Hakuna soko ambalo serikali inagharamia. Bwana Spika, mswada huu kwa ufupi unasema baada ya kiangazi ama kiangazi kinapouma nchi hii, basi kule jimbo la Pwani ambako wanategemea sana mnazi na hasa Rabai ambapo minazi imekithiri pale, minazi huwa inakatika vilele, na mnazi unapokatika huwa ndio mwisho wake. Tunasema kwamba mnazi unapokatika yule mkulima angaliwe, kwa sababu mnazi kwanza unachukua miaka 15 kulelewa mpaka uanze kuzaa nazi. Na wakati mnazi huu unapandwa katika shamba ile, hakuna minazi mingine, hakuna miti mingine ama mimea mingine ambayo inaweza kufanya vizuri. Kwa hivyo huwa ni tegemeo la yule mkulima, anatarajia ya kwamba baada ya ile miaka kutimia, akianza kuvuna ataendelea kuvuna. Lakini kwa bahati mbaya, kiangazi kinapoingia, mti huu ukikatika, ni kwamba yule mkulima amekula hasara kubwa. Mheshimiwa Spika, tuko nchi moja, tuko Kenya moja, na tunasema kama serikali inaweza wakati wa kiangaza, Wizara ya Kilimo ikaangalia kule kiangaza kilipo kithiri, ikafidia watu. Na hii tumeona kule kwa wenzetu, tunaona ng'ombe zinapofariki wakati wa kiangaza, wizara inajukumika, inaenda inachukua idadi ya watu ama wakulima waliopoteza ng'ombe wao na wanapatiwa fidia. Lakini fidia hii pia tunaiona wakati hata mti wa mkahawa unapoathiriwa sana, serikali inaingilia. Lakini mahali ambapo kuna tutasema huwa hakuangaziwi ni pale mnazi unapoathiriwa na kiangazi na kukatika. Ukweli wa mambo ni kwamba mkulima huwa amekula hasara. Huu ni mti ambao umemchukua zaidi ya miaka 10 kulea, na hakuna vile anaweza panda mti mwingine ufanye vizuri kwa miaka michache ile inayofuata. Kwa hivyo anastahili hata yeye kupatiwa fidia kama vile mkulima wa ng'ombe, kama vile mkulima wa kahawa, kama vile wale wakulima wengine wanavyoangaliwa wakati kiangazi kinakithiri. Mheshimiwa Spika, kama Pwani, na tuna imani kwamba kama mnazi ungeangaliwa vizuri, huu mti haungepandwa Pwani peke yake. Juzi nimekuwa Taveta huko ndani na nimekuta minazi mingi, na huu ni mnazi ambao hata Kisumu tumeona kuna minazi kule. Ni mti ambao kama ungeangaziwa, ufanyiwe utafiti wa kutosha, unaweza kuokoa Kenya mzima kiuchumi. Kwa hivyo ombi letu ni kwamba kwanza uorodheshwe kama mti wa kuleta wa kuboresha uchumi ama
Honorable member, point made. Honorable Jaludesa Dida.
Speaker, I just want to be honest and say that I've contributed to this motion. I was requesting to speak in the next one.
Very well. I'd actually checked my record, and thank you for being
thank you.
Honest to that extent. Honorable Mwambire Gubao. My records, it seems you haven't spoken to this.
Asante sana Bwana Spika kwa kunizawadia fursa ya kuunga mkono hoja hii ambayo iko mbele ya bunge. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi siongei tu kwamba ninatoka Pwani ama kwamba ninawakilisha wakulima, lakini mmoja wa wakulima, watumizi na pia mshirikishi mkuu ambaye niko hapa kwa sababu ya kupitia mnazi. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia katika kumbukumbu kabla uhuru kule Pwani, mmea wa mnazi ndio mmea ambao ulikuwa unashamiri zaidi kwa mmea wa kiuchumi, wa kusisimua uchumi. Lakini kulikuwepo na matatizo baada ya kupata uhuru, ambako mmea yote ile ambayo ilikuwa inaangaliwa katika masuala ya kusisimua uchumi kama mnazi kule Pwani iliweza kutolewa, na wapwani wakakosa mmea ambao unaweza kutegemewa. Wengi wametoa faida na thamani za mnazi ambazo zinaenda zaidi ya kiwango cha zaidi ya 100. Mheshimiwa Spika, ukiangalia katika nchi mbalimbali kama Seychelles, kule India, Malaysia na nchi nyinginezo wameendelea zaidi kwa sababu ya kupatia shime mnazi kama mmea wenye bidhaa mbalimbali ambazo zinaweza kuleta mkengeuko wa uchumi. Mheshimiwa Spika, mimi ninaunga mkono 100% kwamba wakati huu umefika wa serikali iweze kuangalia mmea wa mnazi ili iweze kupatia fidia wale ambao minazi yao imeangamia, na pia waweze kupatia fedha ambazo zitasaidia kuendeleza ukulima wa mnazi kule pwani na sehemu zote zile za Kenya ambazo mnazi unaweza kukuzwa. Maana hata kule sehemu za Ukambani nimeenda nimepata minazi inapatikana, kule sehemu za Kisumu nimepata minazi, na sehemu nyinginezo za Kenya ambapo minazi inaweza kukuzwa na ikaendelea vizuri. Mheshimiwa Spika, nina uhakika kwamba serikali ikiweza kuwekeza katika mnazi, basi tutaweza kununua ile minazi aina ya michikichi ili tuweze kupata mafuta mengi ambayo tutaweza kuokoa zaidi ya bilioni 12 ambazo tunapoteza kila mwaka kuleta mafuta ndani ya nchi yetu ya Kenya ili tuweze kutumia katika kuendeleza viwanda tofauti tofauti. Mheshimiwa Spika, na uhakika kama utafiti utaendelea kufanywa kama ilivyokuwa ikifanywa mwaka wa 2004, mwaka wa 2005 ambapo serikali ilikuwa imeangazia zaidi mmea wa mnazi, na uhakika wakazi wa pwani wataanza kujiona pia ni wamoja katika nchi yetu ya Kenya, na watatoa ile athari ya kusema kwamba hawa hawatambuliwi, watatoa ile dhana ya kusema kwamba wanavumilia kuwa Wakenya, na watakuwa pia wanajivunia kama Wakenya kwa sababu kutakuwa kumetokea sababu mwafaka ya kuweza kupata maendeleo. Hivyo basi, Mheshimiwa Spika, ninaunga mkono na nikiomba waheshimiwa wenzangu tushirikiane pamoja na aliyeleta hoja hii Mheshimiwa Owen Baya na aliyefanya mabadiliko Mheshimiwa Tayari, ili tuweze kufanikiwa kupitisha na pia tuweze kuwa na msukumo katika serikali iweze kutimiza, ili wakazi wa pwani, wakazi wa Kenya waweze kupata faida kamilifu za kimaendeleo na tuweze kujitoa katika ile dhana ya kufikiria kwamba tumetengwa kiuchumi. Asante Mheshimiwa Spika.
Honorable Abdullah Sheikh.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to speak on the motion for youth employment, with your permission.
You see, members, I'm not able to tell which, from my screen, but nevertheless, that's fine if you don't want to speak to this, but I'm following my screen. So, Honorable, and I can see members book themselves early for the next and the next. It's an interesting phenomenon, but nevertheless, Honorable Member for Rurambi, I hope you registered interest to speak to this particular one.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just wanted to say something about coconuts because I was born in Mtongwe and grew up eating coconuts, and we realized that coconuts are very important, and especially in our economy, and making oils for cooking, and can actually, if it is like an industry, not just like the selling where they sell in retail form. If we can support coconut farmers, Kilifi, in Mombasa, in the entire coastal region where they grow coconuts, because even where I come from, Mr. Speaker, in Kakamega, even in the markets, you see coconuts are there and people are buying them. We can make a huge economy. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I stand here just to support this motion that the farmers in Kilifi need to be supported, and not only in Kilifi, but to diversify and take it and widen the scope of growing coconuts, because there are other areas where the coconut farming has been neglected. It's not doing very well the way it's supposed to be. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, when we come to this house and we are elected from different constituencies of this country, we become national leaders, whereby we don't just confine ourselves to be maybe vibrant and active. Like for myself, I come from sugarcane area, but still, when there are issues to do with farmers that raise another crop, as a national leader, it's our duty for us to stand up for all the farmers of this country. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, I want to say I support this motion, that we need to support the farmers in Kilifi, we need to support farmers in Kwale, in Mombasa, in Taita, wherever they grow the coconuts, so that this can become an industry in itself, because the oils that we get out of the coconut, they are oils that are used in this country. They are oils that will export to the entire region of East and Central Africa. And Mr. Speaker, I support.
Before I get to the next speaker, I also want to recognize at the public gallery of Lower Sagana Primary School, dear constituency, Kirinyaga County, and they are welcome to follow the proceedings of the House. Now, honorable members, on this particular motion, the 23 minutes, the remaining 23 minutes are done. And so we would have to call the mover to reply at this point. Mover. Honorable Bayer.
Thank you very much, Speaker. And I would like to take this opportunity in reply to thank the members who contributed to this motion and the overwhelming support that this motion received. So therefore, members, I want to say thank you very much. I also want to take note of several things that have been talked about on this motion that members have contributed. One, coconut is an important oil crop. This country imports huge tonnage of oil for cooking and other things. And yet the coconut tree can afford to replace all the imports if government takes cognizance of the fact that the coconut tree is an important tree. Secondly, Mr. Speaker, there was once a tree in the coast region called Bixa. Now, the Bixa tree was one of the trees that was an economic mainstay, especially in Kwale area, which even had a huge factory, which employed thousands of people. But because government neglected Bixa, you don't see any Bixa again in the coast. The factory was closed down. The farmers do not get any income, and those that were laid off lost their jobs. Why? Because there was neglect. Again, in the coast region, there was a plant called castor, which produced the famous castor oil, which was used as an oil crop and also as a medicinal crop and many things. It was a huge industry in the coast. But because government ignored the castor oil tree, our children and the grandchildren that will come after will never even know what a castor tree is. It disappeared from the face of the coast. Why? Because there was sheer neglect. These two trees are now being followed very closely to demise by the coconut and the cashew nut. Why? Because government is not concerned. Today, drought has hit the coast 2-3 years ago. The coconut has suffered immensely, but government is not concerned. Another drought coming in, probably all the coconut trees within the coast region will be wiped out. We are saying that government can take steps towards recovery. And one of the steps is to ensure that we compensate the farmers, that they are able to pay for their loans, they are able also to buy new plants, new varieties, and ensure that we have coconut again in the farmers of these people. Mr. Speaker, I want to speak for the poor farmers of the coast region. Those that have felt that government has not come to their aid for many years. The farmers of the coast who feel that for many years the government has watched Bixa get lost, has watched castor oil getting lost, now government is watching. But I think this government can redeem its image and can redeem itself in the way the people of the coast look at them by ensuring that for the first time the coast farmer is treated the way the coffee farmer, the tea farmer, the pastoralists and their cows and everything. So that they also feel that they are part and parcel of a country that cares for not only for them, but for the economic mainstays that they have. So, Mr. Speaker, just like the Honorable Mwamkali has said, we need to make the cashew nut a cash crop, the coconut tree a cash crop. And therefore, we hope that the Departmental Committee on Agriculture in this House will not only wait for ministry to implement, that they'll be proactive in terms of relooking at the coconut tree and the crops at the coast, so that this 12th Parliament will be counted as the institution that helped the people at the coast to regain an economic mainstay and therefore be able to be economically empowered like any part of this country. Mr. Speaker, I want to say thank you very much to members who contributed, and I want to urge this House that we pass this motion and therefore subsequently, within 6 months, as is demanded by the standing orders, that the Ministry of Agriculture or the State Department of Agriculture takes up this matter and ensures that it is implemented and the farmers at the coast can smile again like they used to be. Thank you very much, and I support. Thank you. I beg to reply.
Yes, you beg to reply.
Yes.
Yeah. What is it, member for Dia?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
What is your point of order?
I stand under Standing Order 53(3) and request that you defer the putting of the question to another day.
Very well, very well. That's okay. You can assume your seat now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Yes, Honourable Member, I see the wisdom of that particular member to ask the Speaker to defer Honourable Nyika, are you saying to do the obvious? It is not obvious. But anyway, I concur with that member that to defer putting the question to a subsequent time. Next order.
Order number 10, motion, provision of specialized training and subsidized cost relating to fistula surgery.
Honorable Janet.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to give out this motion. Honorable Speaker, that you are aware that Article 43 of the Constitution provides every person has a right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the rights to the healthcare services, including reproductive healthcare. Further aware that obstetrical vaginal fistula, VVF, is a devastating condition that affects women and girls across the country, and which has seen many of the patients victimized, abandoned by their communities, deeply concerned that it is estimated that more than 2 million women, girls with a fistula that overs out of every 100,000 in Kenya results in fistula, which results to between 50,000 to 100,000 new fistula cases every year. Alarmed that according to the available reports that through the fistula is treatable with proper medical attention, only 7.5% of the patients with fistula are able to access the medical care for the conditions, mainly due to the related cost and lack of a suitable trained surgeons. That, however, urges the government to provide specialist training for the fistula surgeons and subsidized cost of the fistula surgery in all health facilities in order to make treatment accessible and affordable. Mr. Speaker, I have come across so many cases of fistula in our country. Women and girls that are affected with this disease, so many of them that are being intimidated by the community. And if those ones who are married, men have run away from these women because they cannot afford to stay with them because of the conditions that they have. You see, most of them, like now, when they found themselves that they're making, they're urinating or going for the long call, you see somebody cannot stay with them because of that bad situation that those women and girls that are affected. So, Mr. Speaker, I'm urging the Committee on Health to make sure that they also team up with the government to make sure that these women and girls that are being treated, some of them really come from very poor families. They cannot afford to even go for hospital. Some of them comes from areas like where I come from in Trans Nzoia County. We have a lot of squatters that they cannot afford even to purchase or to buy the trucks. So I urge members of this House to support this motion so that we can help most of the Kenyans outside there. So, Mr. Speaker, I want to call upon my brother, Honorable Tim Wetangula, to second this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
You beg to move.
I beg to move, Mr. Speaker, and call upon Honorable Tim Wetangula to second.
Honorable Tim must be Honorable Wetangula Wanyonyi, I guess. Honorable Wetangula Wanyonyi, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just referred to as Tim Wanyonyi. That's my preferred name. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support and second this motion. Mr. Speaker, in medical, I'm not a medical doctor, but Mr. Speaker, I know there are some things that go on in our medical healthcare that requires, Mr. Speaker, requires the government to intervene, because some of these very these complicated issues, Mr. Speaker, like fistula, this can be corrected by corrective surgery. But because of prohibitive cost, you find most Kenyans cannot afford to go through the process. And so they just elect to stay with it painfully. And Mr. Speaker, it makes a lot of painful lifestyle that people go through. Some are even rejected, as the mover said, and they find themselves in very, very awkward positions and situations. So we encourage that the government should subsidize or completely support the patients who have got this kind of condition, that they get corrective surgery, Mr. Speaker, because it is not very good for somebody to go through such a process when the Constitution and even the healthcare in our country provides that everybody should have access to healthcare at the highest level possible. And most of the time we find that people have even succumbed to very opportunistic diseases because of a condition that has not been treated. And most of this, Mr. Speaker, they're just simple surgeries that can correct this situation, and you'll find the people affected. And you can see the numbers here. Every 1,000 deliveries in Kenya result in fistula, which results in between 50 to 100,000 new fistula cases every year. Mr. Speaker, this is a situation that is worrying, that if not taken care of, it's escalating and might become very dangerous. And you find, Mr. Speaker, because of cost of delivery, most of our women end up in very substandard clinics that have just people who are not doctors, they are just quacks who perform some surgery on them or deliveries, and then it rises into this kind of situation. So I believe that if this situation is taken care of by the government and with support of the Ministry of Health, and I'm sure they can arrest the situation, and help can be given to the patients who are suffering from this condition, Mr. Speaker. I know there are many other conditions that also require intervention from the government. There are people living with very simple, with the conditions that can be corrected by surgery. I'm sure the doctors who are in the House, Mr. Speaker, they'll speak more competently on this motion than us laymen. But I know there are situations that can be corrected, simple things. But because of the cost element, I find people are unable, Mr. Speaker, even to go to hospital. We've seen even people who are suffering, even malaria. They are unable to go to hospital because the doctors will just prescribe and tell them to go and buy the medicine from elsewhere. So this is some of the things that I think should be addressed as a fundamental right of the citizens of this country, so that people are given an opportunity to access medical health care. Mr. Speaker, I beg to support this motion, and I thank Honorable Janet Nangabo for coming up with this motion. And Mr. Speaker, I beg to second.
Thank you very much. Honorable members, I wish to propose a question, which is that, aware that Article 43 of the Constitution provides that every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to health care services, including reproductive health care. Further, aware that obstetric or vesico-vaginal fistula, VVF, is a devastating condition that affects women and girls across the country, and which has seen many of the patients victimized, abandoned and ostracized by their communities. Deeply concerned that it is estimated that more than 2 million women and girls live with fistula, and that 4 out of every 1,000 deliveries in Kenya result in fistula, which results in between 50,000 to 100,000 new fistula cases every year. Alarmed that according to available reports, though fistula is treatable with the proper medical attention, only 7.5% of patients with fistula are able to access medical care for the condition, mainly due to the related costs and lack of suitably trained surgeons. This House urges the government to provide specialized training for fistula surgeons and subsidizes costs for fistula surgery in all health facilities in order to make treatment accessible and affordable. Shall we have Honorable Rono Kipkosgei, member of Keio South?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. Although I was for the unemployment disaster, but I will certainly contribute to this because these chances are very rare to come by. Honorable Speaker, I want to support Honorable Janet, who has brought this motion about the fistula. We do know how people are treated who suffer from fistula. It is very important, certainly, that this unit of people who suffer from these diseases be treated in a specialized way. It's like actually suffering from a disease that people can actually run away from you. Because what normally happens, as you have heard, that we actually need specialized doctors so that they can deal with this matter in a more specialized way, so that we have certain facilities for this disease, so that they are treated in a more specialized way. Because if you can see, out of 1,000 parts that we have just read.
Order, Honorable Bayer. That is completely out of order. It is not possible to do that. Nevertheless, I'm not refusing you to converse with Honorable Jaldesa, but you can go around like that and come back. Honorable Rono, you have the floor.
Yes. As you have seen, Honorable Speaker, out of 1,000 deliveries, 4 have this condition, which is a worrying scenario. It's a worrying scenario, and I support the honorable member who has brought this motion. These are individuals who are normally discriminated against. These are individuals, most of them come from poor backgrounds and end up not getting proper medical care. So I beg to support. Thank you, Speaker.
Honorable Adagala. What are you saying, Honorable Redepe?
I just said Nakara, and my name is Nakara.
Fortunately, that is what you had, but that's not what I said. And I can tell your card is a bit down, but it's okay. Honorable Adagala, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me time to speak on this motion that has been brought here by...
Honorable Adagala. What is it, Honorable Mohammed Osman? You seem to have pressed an intervention. Please, you can only catch the speaker, not through the intervention. Yes, Honorable Adagala.
Yeah, I also want to echo my few comments on this motion concerning provision of specialized training and subsidized course relating to fistula surgery, brought in by Honorable Nangabo. Mr. Speaker, sir, this situation, it is alarming, and there are so many people in this nation of Kenya who are undergoing this embarrassing situation, Mr. Speaker, sir, and they don't talk about it. And especially women in the villages. Like in my county, if you move around, you get a woman, she's just seated in the village. When you talk to her, she will easily say that I have a problem if you probe her more and more. But most of them tend to shy off from coming to the public or talking to people about this situation. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank Honorable Member for bringing up this motion. It will open the eyes of so many who are undergoing it, and they are quiet all over the Republic. And I would argue maybe the MEDIC or the Kenya government, as they go for the 4 agenda, meeting the targets, to look into this issue urgently, and if possible, make it free of charge, because most of the affected people are those lowly Kenyans who are out there who can't afford to pay for this surgery. Maybe if it can be put, Mr. Speaker, sir, in every county, for these people not to be traveling to very far areas to get the corrections, the necessary surgeries that are needed. You will find most of the women, Mr. Speaker, and the girls who are in school going may not be able to go to school because this situation is terrifying and it is terrible. So I would support this motion by saying that the government has to look into this issue very urgently, and this matter be treated as an urgent to assist these women who are suffering quietly in the villages at home. Mr. Speaker, sir, I beg to support this motion. Thank you.
Honorable Denita.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to support this motion by Honorable Janet Nangabo. Mr. Speaker, allow me to say that the Honorable Janet Nangabo is speaking on behalf of so many millions of women and millions of girls. Mr. Speaker, Fistula, and I'm happy, Mr. Speaker, that the support that has come out from Honorable Wanyonyi, Honorable Rono, Mr. Speaker, Fistula is not only a women's issue. Mr. Speaker, before Parliament, I worked for the Population Council. That is an international NGO, Mr. Speaker, that does a lot of research on issues sexual reproductive health. And fistula is one of the issues, Mr. Speaker, that we tackled. Mr. Speaker, fistula is causing a lot of untold suffering for women and girls in Kenya and in Africa. Mr. Speaker, it is, as I say, it is a reproductive health issue. The Constitution of this country, Mr. Speaker, talks about attainable, sustainable standards of health for its people. Mr. Speaker, Article 3 of the Sustainable Development Goals talks about the requirement and how nations are supposed to provide for health care, and especially maternal health. Mr. Speaker, I can tell you for sure that there are millions of women, not only in urban areas, Mr. Speaker, but in rural areas where a lot of our population of women live, Mr. Speaker, that are suffering in silence from fistula. For those who do not know, Mr. Speaker, fistula is a condition, Mr. Speaker, usually, you know, it is like a hole. It is a hole in between. Mr. Speaker, it is a hole in between the urethra and the vagina. Mr. Speaker, issues that we are calling fistula, or what we are calling in scientific terms, Mr. Speaker, as vesical vaginal fistula. Mr. Speaker, is a devastating condition that generally puts women in uncontrollable situations, Mr. Speaker. In areas in this country, Mr. Speaker, and as you know, issues health, Mr. Speaker, is a devolved function. Health is a devolved function, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, what we are talking about is to ensure that we train a lot more of specialized doctors, Mr. Speaker, specialized surgeons, that, Mr. Speaker, can handle the issue of fistula, issues of reproductive health in those rural settings, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, you are very much aware that the doctor-patient ratio in this country, Mr. Speaker, and most of our countries in Africa, is still wanting. We are yet to invest, Mr. Speaker, in attainable, sustainable healthcare, where the doctor-patient ratio is actually kind of balanced, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, we should know that fistula is basically usually caused by issues of lack of accessible to healthcare, Mr. Speaker. Maternal health in this country continues to be wanting. Mr. Speaker, from areas where we come from, like myself, issues where female genital cutting, what we are calling FGC or FGM, is the norm. There are cultures in this country, Mr. Speaker, that also contribute to what we are talking about fistula today. FGM being one of them, child marriage being one of them in communities like mine, which is the Kuria community. Mr. Speaker, how then do we urge this government to ensure, Mr. Speaker, that the issues that we are talking about, fistula, that is causing unnecessary suffering to our women and girls in rural settings, Mr. Speaker, is addressed? We need to look at specialized healthcare, Mr. Speaker, and specialized doctors, so that we're investing and actually providing enough funding to hospitals in our counties and constituencies, so that issues fistula are able to be addressed at that level. Women should not be chased or ostracized from their communities simply because of fistula, Mr. Speaker. And it is good that we are discussing issues sexual reproductive health in this August House, Mr. Speaker. It is high time. Mr. Speaker, I want to really thank the member. Because, Mr. Speaker, there are topics that are usually taboo, but they are affecting women in this country. And therefore, Mr. Speaker, providing funding, providing a curriculum, Mr. Speaker, that basically goes a long way in training our healthcare providers in our various hospitals. Mr. Speaker, I want to join in urging this country to invest and actually save women who are suffering from fistula in this country, Mr. Speaker. I do support.
Very well. I can tell Honorable Nyika want to speak to this, and we know his expertise. But before I give Honorable Nyika, because Honorable Nyika, it's good to listen to, and I'm sure you'll put things into perspective based on your experience and training. Before I give Honorable Nyika, let me have Honorable Gitau.
Give me the mic. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Honorable Speaker. I rise to support this motion and to congratulate the mover, Honorable Janet, for bringing to the attention of this House and Kenya at large the suffering that fistula patients go through in this country. Fistula, Honorable Speaker, is a disease that causes urine and or stool incontinence. It causes infections, pain, and bad smell, and often triggers stigma and the breakdown of families because of the smell that the patient is producing. So families break down, some don't work anymore, and of course the community life is interrupted. As the mover puts it, more than 2 million women and girls live with obstetric fistula, most of which occur as a result of complicated deliveries. Women with obstructed labor, which can lead to fistula, need emergency obstetric care, such as cesarean sections. Inadequate access to emergency obstetric care, especially for poor and rural women, is a long outstanding problem in this country. In my county alone, Honorable Speaker, I have 10 fistula cases I'm dealing with. And I'm telling you that it is quite very frustrating because their treatment is not forthcoming. Therefore, Honorable Speaker, the government should urgently train fistula surgeons and doctors. Honorable Speaker, currently we only have 15 fistula surgeons in this country. And fistula services in both county or country hospitals should therefore be made affordable or just be made free of charge. There is also a need for institutional preparedness that you see an improvement in the quality of care at health facilities as well as effective referral systems. We also need a more awareness campaigns at the community level. Honorable Speaker, I support.
Honorable Nyikal.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this serious problem, vesicovaginal fistula. Mr. Speaker, this is a serious problem that arises from difficult and prolonged labor, which causes the damage to the bladder and to the vagina, therefore causing a direct connection between the urinary bladder and the vagina. And therefore, urine henceforth moves directly from the bladder into the vagina and out without any control. So the affected women, Mr. Speaker, are therefore continuously leaking urine and they cannot control it. If it happens backwards, the same will happen with the rectum. And so, once again, feces can pass out the same way through the vagina. And because of that, the women suffer terrible social problems. They are all the time wet. They try to put dressings and so on, but the urine continues there, and there's a terrible smell, and because of that, they get very frequent infections. That aside, Mr. Speaker, the social stigma associated with it, many women that are married are actually divorced, and often nobody will say why. And even the women themselves hide this, and therefore the social suffering may even be greater than the physical suffering. And Mr. Speaker, it is a big problem. One, 4 out of 1,000 women who deliver get into this problem. And basically, it's because the labor was difficult and took a long time and damaged the structures in the birth canal. And that is what happens. And it is directly, Mr. Speaker, a result of poor health care, particularly obstetric care. And in a few cases, may also be due to damage to other things like female genital cutting. But the main thing is that obstetric care. It is even worse if it happens to girls that get pregnant early when their structures are not adequate to accommodate the birth process. And it can be repaired, and repair can be done. But because of the damage to the tissues, it's a very difficult. In fact, all obstetricians with a little bit of training can do this repair. And therefore, I really support that we should have a program that deals with it. We really need the data, and I think there's a process to get all this data, so that all the women that are affected actually are in a program and can be taken care of. But more importantly, Mr. Speaker, this is a preventable thing. If we have proper obstetric care, attending antenatal clinics, delivering in situations where cesarean section can be done adequately, this should not happen. And I can assure you, Mr. Speaker, that if we can go into universal health care where every woman can access delivery in a hospital, where a cesarean section can be done by any medical officer, we shall eliminate this problem. So as much as we put a lot of emphasis in starting a program, training surgeons, I think the most important way to address this, Mr. Speaker, would be to actually improve our antenatal and obstetric care so that no woman gets it. Programs such as Linda Mama, Mr. Speaker, will go a long way in eliminating this problem. For me, I don't think we should have a big program for treating it. The program we need is the program of elimination. If every woman delivers in a hospital, gets appropriate care, fistulas will be a thing of the past. And Mr. Speaker, I think that is where we should be. Support universal health care, support programs like Linda Mama, start good antenatal care so that every woman gets the delivery that they deserve. And with that, there will be no.
Honorable Nyikal, I know your 5 minutes is done, but I will take the liberty to add you. Obviously, part of it is because of your expertise in the area, but also I noticed that you are a member of the Health Committee, and the chair of the Health Committee isn't here. So for those two reasons, I award you 5 more marks. 5, not marks, but 5 more minutes.
Mr. Speaker, I'm almost done, but I think the summary of it is our mobilization of the communities, our support for health services, the availability of care, the implementation of universal health coverage, particularly focusing in deliveries, will actually eliminate fistula. But in the meantime, there are a large number of women who have the problem, and I think what we need is actually a large data and put up a two-pronged program. One, take care of the women that are already affected, and 2, make sure that no other women get this problem. Mr. Speaker, I take the cue that has come from the mover and from yourself that this is a matter that probably we should look at the Health Committee and actually support the programs that are already in existence and make the public know. The public should know that the woman affected has done no wrong, and the stigma should be removed. Many don't even say they are sick. So there are people who need empathy, sympathy, and care. We will then be able to deal with the issue of fistula. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. Shall we now have Honorable Jaldesa Dida?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. I also want to join my colleagues in really thanking Madam Janet Nangabo for bringing this very, very, very critical motion touching on the lives and the dignity of women. Mr. Speaker, as has been said, obstetric fistula is the most devastating and serious of all childbirth injuries, and this is really, as indicated, a human rights issue. Mr. Speaker, an obstetric fistula is a hole between the vagina and the rectum or the bladder, which causes the leaking of urine and sometimes feces, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, this is caused by obstructed or prolonged labor, which takes like 7 days or even more. Mr. Speaker, it is caused by a labor which is neglected, or sometimes the labor that is left unattended, which, Mr. Speaker, in itself is a negligence and a demeaning of human rights, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, fistula occurs among women who give birth without proper medical care, coupled with some traditional practice such as FGM and early marriages, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, this is an issue which is very common in areas like where I come from, the county of Isiolo, where women have to track kilometers and kilometers to access even a small health center, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, given that health is a devolved function, but 2 sessions down the line, Mr. Speaker, we are yet to see the benefits of devolution in the counties. Therefore, women keep suffering. Mr. Speaker, the county I represent of Isiolo is one of a county that is generally not very receptive to women, issues of women, because of its traditional setup. Mr. Speaker, when women suffer from fistula, they are completely ignored, stigmatized, isolated by the community, by their families. They are regarded as being bewitched, or as being witches themselves, Mr. Speaker. I have encountered in this 1 year women who have been chased away from their homes by their husbands who are supposed to give them love and care just because of a situation which is not of their making, Mr. Speaker. Therefore, Mr. Speaker, I am contributing this motion with a lot of heavy heart. Mr. Speaker, having said that, we also do appreciate the government of Kenya for some positive steps that it has taken to improve the reproductive and the maternal welfare of women. However, Mr. Speaker, I believe much needs to be done. Mr. Speaker, I am proposing on top of what Mheshimiwa Nangabo is proposing, that the governments need to come up with strategies to improve maternal health care, to make sure that patients have access to information so that they can make an informed decision. Information such as where they can go for their post and antenatal care, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I further want to say that the World Health Organization have developed an important recommendation for clinical management of fistula, as well as program to address issues of fistula prevention and rehabilitation. However, Kenya has not adopted this recommendation, Mr. Speaker. I therefore propose the government to develop and implement a national fistula strategy in accordance with the World Health Organization. Mr. Speaker, also, I wish the government to carry out awareness program that raises information to the public. And lastly, there is the community midwifery model to cover the whole county and to address the payment of those midwives who are the traditional birth attendant. Therefore, I support, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Tandaza Sawa, member for Matuga.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. May I take this opportunity to also thank the mover of this motion, Honorable Janet Nangabo, for highlighting some of the issues whereby in my community they are considered to be very private. Matters, private parts are very private, to the extent that I'm alarmed by the statistics given here. If for every 1,000 births, there are 4 cases, then you can imagine how private my people are, because one would have imagined we don't have such cases in my constituency, which is Matuga. But simply because there are issues to deal with the private parts, then you realize nobody, as other members have already said, have not heard of any case. But from the statistics, it means they're there. In fact, I'm even further alarmed in the sense that the causes are issues like delayed labor. In my constituency, for sure, while others are talking of lack of level 5 hospitals, we don't have even a level 4 hospital in my constituency, despite the fact that the county headquarters actually is my constituency. So you can imagine how many cases we could be having in my constituency. Turning to the issue of specialized training. The main problem is actually the issue of medical training in general, whereby in Kenya, it is very expensive, and it's not as paying as the other professions. You could take, for instance, if you are to take your own child, or even try to pay for somebody to do a medical course, you will be talking of 1 million shillings upwards per year. And yet, other causes, you will be talking of 70 to 80,000 per year. When it comes to payment after college, despite the fact that a medical practitioner could have to undergo up to 10 years and above, the payment really is not a lot different from the other causes. So here, I would propose a situation whereby the government has a deliberate effort to lower the cost of training for medical practitioners, because it's out of that that you are going to have specialized medical practitioners in this field of fistula. The other issue that I would want addressed through this motion is the issue of medical cover. Because when you talk about universal health care, then one would have imagined that NHIF, which basically takes care of medical cases, would adequately and very fast cover such cases. Unfortunately, it is for those who are employed or those who subscribe and therefore pay. We know that in Kenya, we have very high rate of unemployment. Through this motion, it has also come out that it's also mainly women from the rural, meaning they are not employed. They are not in any gainful employment. Therefore, they are not able to actually register, even for NHF, which would have covered these cases. I would propose through this motion that it goes further to urge the government, through the Committee on Health, to see to it that these cases are just covered by the National Insurance Fund. Probably to expand it to cases whereby one has a devastating situation like this one, and she is not able to cater for the normal contributions to the National Health Insurance Fund. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I second the motion. Thank you.
You second? Did you say?
Second.
Well,
support.
You support?
Support.
Yes.
Sorry.
Very well. Honorable Huru for order.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity to contribute to this motion. I would like to support the motion. Mr. Speaker, fistula is a very devastating condition for our women. Of course, as earlier members who have contributed to this motion have indicated, the statistics on women who have suffered fistula in our country is really worrying. In fact, there are a number of socio-economic factors which contribute to our women and girls suffering this particular condition. In our areas, particularly in the pastoral areas, for example, we have harmful cultural practices like FGM and also early marriages. When girls are married at very tender ages, and they are put in the way of, childbearing because their biological systems have not developed sufficient enough to actually nurture the baby and facilitate, delivery, we end up with girls, young girls, with this condition. Many of these cases go unreported. In fact, the statistics on fistula indicates that for every woman that receives treatment in Kenya, 50 others go untreated. And these 50 are the ones who are silent. Of course, it is a very humiliating and stigmatizing situation, as has been already indicated, because of continuous passing of urine, and at times mixing of urine with feces, and the foul smell which emanates from these conditions. These women hide themselves away. If they are married, their marriages break up because they can no longer stay with their husbands. And even for those who are treated, I think there's very little care in terms of what we do for them to get rehabilitated and get integrated back into the society. Because once even the corrective surgery is done, more is needed in terms of psychological, counseling, in terms of providing them support so that we can develop their confidence as women to go back and start, interacting with other members of the society. Mr. Speaker, I would like to agree with many of the speakers who have said that in as much as we support the motion, we need to strengthen our preventive programs. Actually, one of the major reasons why we are having cases of fistula is because of lack of access to quality obstetric care by our women. Of course, there are a lot of programs, especially the program which the First Lady has rolled out in the first term of His Excellency, Honorable Uhuru, and which is continuing up to now. And it has gone a long way in terms of improving care for our mother, in terms of improving the maternal care. We need this to be strengthened. And again, one of the major things which needs to be done is to enhance awareness among women and girls on the fact that fistula is a condition which can be treated. Even those who suffer the condition, many are not aware that the condition is treatable. For those who are aware that the condition is treatable, they do not know where to access these services. For those who know where to access it, unless it is supported or sponsored by government or some other organizations, whether private or public, they cannot afford the cost of undergoing the corrective surgery. And therefore, as a country, I think we need to emphasize the fact that access to highest attainable healthcare for women is a matter of human rights. And therefore, we must endeavor and we must encourage the State Department of Health as well as the county governments to make sure that all our women have access to the highest quality of maternal care which is attainable, given probably the resources at the disposal of the government agencies. At the same time, I think as leaders, we also have responsibility. We need to work with all the stakeholders to make sure that issues like early childhood marriage is eliminated in all its forms once and for all, because that is one of the major causes of this fistula and so on and so forth. With those remarks, I would like to support.
Honorable Muhanda Busihile.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me the chance at least to add my voice to this very serious situation in our country. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the Bill of Rights, every citizen has the right to dignity. But Mr. Speaker, you find that these women are dejected, these women are not accepted in the society. You find that these women cannot even enjoy conjugal rights, Mr. Speaker. With this urine and feces coming, these women cannot live a total life. You also find, Mr. Speaker, that these particular women, even their right to breastfeed their children, how can you breastfeed your child when you are faced with these problems? Mr. Speaker, for these women to have dignity in life, this fistula issue must be attended to. Mr. Speaker, you find that we have the Big Four. How can these women contribute to the Big Four, Mr. Speaker, if they are in this state? How can these women even go to the field? Or how can these women, you know, like now in Kenya, you find that women, we are supposed to be empowered, isn't it? So for economic empowerment, a woman must be fit. But Mr. Speaker, you find that these women are just dejected in the society. They cannot do anything. When they go to sit with the other women and other people reject them. Their families reject them. So, Mr. Speaker, I support this motion for the sake of these women to be total women in the society. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Mohammed Osman.
Mr. Speaker, I want to contribute on youth. The next, I think.
Oh, very well. You know, member, I can't know. I just saw you on top of here. But that's fine. That's fine, honorable member. When that time comes, the speaker may catch your...
Okay, thank you.
You may catch the speaker's eye. Honorable Nakala Ledepe, I hope it's for this one. You also didn't book the next one.
Honorable Speaker, I stand to support this motion and join my colleagues who have actually given some readings and some have given proposals on how to tackle this problem, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, according to the statistics given here by Armory of Africa, it says that Kenyans who suffer from fistula are 6 million in this country. You can imagine that one. 6 million women suffer from fistula in this country. And those who visit Kenyatta National Hospital, there are 10%. That means every 10 patients with fistula in this country, one is a man. So, Honorable Speaker, this means that our people are suffering. And this is a threatening life disease, which we need to see how we can tackle it to help our people. Honorable Speaker, they have given some causes of this disease. And these causes, Honorable Speaker, can be avoided. But can avoid them, Honorable Speaker, by having specialists in our hospitals where our women give delivery. Honorable Speaker, we need to provide specialized training and subsidy because most of Kenyans are poor. So unless the government come up with a program that can provide specialized training for specific people for this disease, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, as you know that the treatment in this country is very expensive. Some people cannot afford. And unfortunately, Honorable Speaker, the people who suffer from this disease, most of them are poor. They cannot even afford to pay the expenses. And Honorable Speaker, I want to agree with the members that they need to be subsidized the cost so that even the poor people can afford. More than that, Honorable Speaker, we need a cover that can actually be given free to anybody suffering from this disease so that we can save lives in this country, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, despite what we have heard from other members, we lack specialists in this country. One of the members said we have only 15 specialists in this country for that disease. Honorable Speaker, compare 6 million who are suffering in this country with 15 specialists. Honorable Speaker, that number cannot add up. So we need to train more specialists on this area because we are losing lives. These are threatening life diseases, Honorable Speaker. Honorable Speaker, we can also afford to lose our people through lack of access to maternity care by providing skilled care and availability, an available facility, especially for people suffering from this disease. We can afford as a country. Because, Honorable Speaker, another cause is poverty. We can also afford that, Honorable Speaker, by giving every person who suffers from this disease a cover, or we include in NHF, or the government pays, or the county government provide, or even the CDF, so that, Honorable Speaker, we can save lives. Honorable Speaker, we need to discourage harmful traditional practices like FGM we need to discourage. If we get somebody practicing that kind of traditional practices at this age, Honorable Speaker, we need to deal with those people so that we can save life. Honorable Speaker, in conclusion, I want to say that we want also to deal with the people who do sexual violence. Because, Honorable Speaker, when the rapists do harm to our young girls, they go without any problem. And the laws of this country, we need to tighten it so that whoever destroyed a person's life through raping, we deal with him seriously so that we can save the lives of our young girls. With those few remarks, Honorable Speaker, I tend to support it. Thank you.
Honorable Kay.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir. I stand to support the motion. And Mr. Speaker, sir, fistula affects both genders, but it is more pronounced in women than in men. Mr. Speaker, sir, fistula comes usually from obstructed labor. Also, it is caused by early marriages, sexual violence, lack of maternity care, harmful practices like FGM. Also, poverty is also a factor because it gives stunted growth to affected children. So there are various and diverse factors that really cause fistula. Having said that, usually what happens is that once it affects you, because it is a hole that develops between the vagina and the rectum, which now causes the mixing of stool and urine. And Mr. Speaker, sir, this stigma ensures that men generally would want nothing to do with a smelly woman. And it is not because of their own making. It is because of that condition. The rate of divorce to a woman who's suffering from fistula is so high. And again, it is not because of the making of the lady. And therefore, this motion is very timely to ensure that such stigmatization of women goes away. And also, it is important that we create civic education to teach men that these things are there. Indeed, Mr. Speaker, sir, time and again, we are told to be there during the birth of our children, be present to see the kind of situation that happens in that bathroom. Having said that, we are told that about 4 women out of every 1,000 suffers from this condition. And it is only fair and right that these services that cure this situation are extended to all hospitals, are extended to dispensaries, are extended to health centers, are extended to our hospitals in Kenya. That way, we bring back the dignity of women who suffer from this. That way, we ensure that women also go about building the nation in a manner that is respectable and in a manner that makes sure that they don't get stigmatized. As I finish, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is also important to know that the very people who suffer from this, the many people, the most affected gender, that is women, are the drivers of the economy. They are the people who put together our families, and we need to support them to ensure that they have that dignity of a woman. The essence of a woman is hygiene. I support. Thank you.
Honorable Oduol Obaka.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I'd like to contribute to the problem of fistula that affects women mainly. And as you know, women have a lot of health problems, quite distinct, and which is very expensive and definitely not accessible to them. We are told that fistula is caused by obstructed labor, early pregnancy, especially when a girl is very young, and she gets pregnant, chances are very high that she's going to experience obstructed labor and may end up with fistula. I believe that there is lack of information on health education for the girl child, because many of them get pregnant without knowing their bodies, without knowing the effect of early premarital sex. And a lot of them, when they get pregnant, don't even visit hospitals for antenatal care. Some religion also do not allow sick people to go to hospital. So sometimes that is also a factor, cultural issues, including religion, that may bar women from visiting hospitals. As a result, women do suffer from fistula. But I've been hearing many times announcement on radio that there are certain areas, there are certain hospitals asking women with these problems to visit so that they can be helped. It's also very expensive for them to travel to those areas. There's been one that has been announced several times in Kisii area, and the people from Siaya, where I represent, find it very difficult to get to Kisii. And so I'm requesting that opportunities such as those, where there are certain doctors who are ready to support women in this area and are probably giving free medical treatment or subsidized treatment, should spread out and visit many other hospitals in different counties. And I do appreciate the effort that they are trying to give. I know it's an expensive exercise, but when you are dealing with little girls who get pregnant, then you can also begin to imagine that these little girls cannot access this treatment because they cannot afford to have even the medical cards, the NHIF cards. You have to pay money, 500 shillings per month. These girls don't have those, that kind of money. They cannot have the cards. And so the treatment becomes very, very difficult to access. I think there's need for us to give free treatment in some of these cases where it needs special attention. Fistula requires special treatment. It requires a lot of money, and therefore there's need to make it free for more women to be able to access it. Finally, health education is critical. I think every girl, every boy, every teenager should be given information about their bodies so that they know how to avoid early pregnancy. They can avoid many other diseases that do come through sex, such as HIV and AIDS, such as STI. These are problems that are facing young people, and many of them do not access health services. If we are going to improve on giving health services to everybody, universal health care, then we need to begin by giving young people information about sexual diseases and prevention as well as care. Thank you very much, and I support this motion.
Before I give to the next member, let me recognize at the public gallery 3 schools. Kidhunguri Primary School from Imenti South Constituency, Meru County. We also have Derekeni Primary School from Masinga Constituency, Machakos County. As well as Kivi Primary School, Kangudo Constituency, Machakos County. The 3 schools are welcome to follow the proceedings of the House. Shall we have Honorable Lisa Chepkoril?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, sir, for giving me this opportunity to also contribute to this motion. And first, before I contribute to this motion, Mr. Speaker, I want to really thank the mover of this motion, Honorable Nangapo, for bringing this motion to the floor of this House. Mr. Speaker, sir, we all know that this is a very horrible situation for women. For those who are affected, it's a problem that affects all of us, actually. If we are not infected or we are not suffering the same problem, but if women are suffering, it is as if we are suffering, all of us as women. Mr. Speaker, sir, the mover of this motion is requesting the government to provide specialized training and about the fistula surgeons and subsidized cost of this fistula surgery. But what I want to add, Mr. Speaker, sir, is to advocate or to educate the people about the cause of fistula problem. I think the most important thing is to let the women know the cause of this problem. And my second request to the government is to give free surgery. We shouldn't be talking about the subsidized surgery, but the surgery should be free completely. And another thing, Mr. Speaker, sir, that I want to speak about on this issue is to have the service being given at sub-county hospitals. Instead of maybe a patient traveling from Nakuru to Nairobi or traveling from rural areas to very far hospital, the service should be given at a sub-county hospital. Mr. Speaker, sir, I believe that it is the responsibility of this House to look into the issues of health services in our hospitals. The people of this country should actually get quality service in our hospitals, and I think there are some problems. And as we are talking about these fistula issues, there are so many issues that the people of this country do not know about it. Information is power, and there should be information, especially to this issue of fistula problem. So it's very important for women to be educated about the cause of fistula. I am so happy that this motion has been brought to this House, and I'm happy the way my honorable members, those members who have talked before me, the way they are supporting, and I also support. So with these few remarks, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Okello Odoyo, Member for Nyando.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this timely motion on provision of specialized trainings and subsidized costs relating to fistula surgery. We cannot delve very much on description of what fistula basically means, because most of the speakers have properly given its description as a prolonged and protracted labor pain by women who are yet to deliver. Mr. Speaker, this affects a woman's life physically. It affects them psychosocially, and it affects them economically. When a woman is undergoing through fistula challenges, they are denied an opportunity to have self-esteem and self-confidence. And therefore, this motion ought to have also included the need to have level 5 hospitals in various counties stocked with doctors or obstetricians who have the capacity to handle issues related to fistula. Mr. Speaker, it denies our women an opportunity to engage in economic activities because the condition that they are in may not permit them to fully exploit their potential by so creating wealth. And hence, the need for surgery to repair the physical damage of fistula and the devastating consequences that affects a woman's quality of life, which may persist when she reintegrates into her community. We have been told that they experience urinary incontinence, and this creates a lot of discomfort to these women. It also affects their relationships, because really, no man would have the confidence and the wherewithal to relate with a woman who is undergoing all these challenges. And we know how they have to use pads and they have to use clothes and other materials to cover themselves from the stench and from the wetness that they experience. So this motion is meant to repair and resolve many of the concerns women had before they experienced fistula. And the repair will improve quality of life at individual level, and including feelings of freedom, confidence, and personal growth, and improved income earning ability. This is will create interpersonal growth and improved income ability, interpersonal quality of life, improvements and relationships with family, friends, and hence reduce stigma and increased participation within their communities. Mr. Speaker, the women victims desire more children, but the fear for recurrence is always a deterrent. Women should be well informed about fistula development because in other communities, this is misinterpreted to mean witchcraft within these communities. And therefore, a proper knowledge about fistula and what the causes are and the underlying factors would help eradicate this kind of fears and even of delivery, which has always become quite rampant. And therefore, arise to support this motion on provision of specialized training and subsidized costs relating to fistula surgery. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Shall we have Honorable Noor Sophia?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I want to add my voice in supporting this motion. And while supporting this motion is a motion that is familiar to me. I've worked in this area for many years, and I am a founder and a CEO of a non-governmental organization called Womankind Kenya, who did a lot in the areas of reproductive health, and I've been running an integrated program. And I have met physically with women and girls who suffer fistula, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I have counseled, I've sat, I've ate with women who are despised by their community, who feel, not part of the community, who have had a lot of problems because of the kind of, problems they have faced. And with that, I've been able to interact with doctors within this country and beyond this country, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, and I want to salute some great men in this country. There is a man called Dr. Mohamud. He is the governor of Red Cross Kenya chapter. And Dr. Aden Abdullahi. These are two great men, Mr. Speaker, who have supported fistula programs in some parts of this country, Mr. Speaker, across the country. Mr. Speaker, while I was suffering and the women were suffering and crying and didn't know where to go to for help, because if you go to the health centers, there are no specialized people who could help them. If you go even to the general hospital, you will not find a specialized doctor who could treat them. But those two great men, when I sat with them, interacted with them, discussed with them the problem that the women were facing, Mr. Speaker, they went out of their way to do their own research and to find a solution that could help these women. Mr. Speaker, they connected me to doctors in Spain, Mr. Speaker. When they connected me to the doctors in Spain, those doctors came all the way to Garissa and Ijara in particular. They did a lot of fistula repairs in Ijara, Mr. Speaker. When I was in the 10th Parliament, Mr. Speaker, I was a champion on fistula issues. I had many meetings in Jomo, in Kenyatta Hospital, and down in my constituency in Ijara, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know the psychological problem women face when they are suffering on fistula, and particularly the girls who are coming to schools, Mr. Speaker, and who cannot control urine, Mr. Speaker. Imagine they cannot control their urine, they cannot control their feces, and when they come to schools, it becomes a problem. So they drop out of school, they go away, and that is, you know, a major psychological problem that the girls drop out of school, Mr. Speaker. These doctors, Mr. Speaker, supported that program, and they went out of their way to do health education so that they tell the people what are the causes of fistula. I've been doing a lot of female genital education programs, Mr. Speaker. Early marriages, which you know is one of the factors that contribute to the fistula, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is important that as a nation and as this House, when we have 6 million of our women and girls who are affected in one way or the other by fistula, we cannot just take that for granted, Mr. Speaker. It's big population. It is a group that, you know, we cannot just leave them like that. Our constitution is very clear on provision of healthcare. It is compulsory free healthcare, universal for every person in this country, Mr. Speaker. And because of that, it is crucial that the Ministry of Health critically look at how they can now positively and discriminatively, how they can recruit doctors who are specialized on fistula repairs, Mr. Speaker. They can help this country. And Mr. Speaker, if we are very serious as a House, we must keep aside resources that can train and that can give us personnel that can go and serve this nation, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if we do not tie resources into allocating resources and for a problem like fistula, Mr. Speaker, and we do not have a special...
Yes, Honorable Sophia, time is up for you. Honorable Kihara Kimari, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to support this very important motion by Honorable Janet. Mr. Speaker, I do not want to belabor on issues that have already been mentioned by those who have talked before me. But, Mr. Speaker, it is very clear that the numbers are extremely worrying. From Honorable Janet, she says upwards of over 2 million women have this condition. Madam Sophia has said these numbers could even be much, much higher. Mr. Speaker, if you look at the numbers that are also getting affected by fistula, every year we are told close to 100,000 women are suffering, new entrants for this. Mr. Speaker, this to me is a national disaster that needs to be addressed. It's alarming. The numbers are extremely alarming because we are actually saying upwards of 10% of our women are silently suffering from this disease or this condition. Mr. Speaker, it is therefore important that we ensure as a country that we have enough doctors that can properly, who are properly trained to treat these patients with this condition. And Mr. Speaker, healthcare, universal healthcare being one of the key pillars of our current government. This is something that we cannot take for granted. We need to ensure that that is properly followed, that it is, this issue of fistula is addressed. The psychological effect on women with this disease cannot be overemphasized. So, Mr. Speaker, I truly stand to support this particular motion and pray that the treatment also will be totally subsidized and perhaps even made free. And more importantly, even the issue of educating and going out even in barazas to talk about this condition so that women can come out and appreciate that this is something, it's just a condition, but can be treated, is something I think that should also be followed through so that our women can stop suffering in silence. I stand to support. Thank you.
Honorable Gogo Achieng. Honorable Gogo Achieng, I can see Honorable Gogo Achieng, you translocated to another place. Or are you surrendering your space and
Honorable Speaker, thank you very much. I've not located to another place.
My sister made a very good contribution on the motion that is currently ongoing, and I'd gone to congratulate her, but besides, she is unwell. She broke her leg, so I'd gone to really empathize with her position. But having said that, I'm rising to support this particular motion. And fistula is a real big problem in this country, Honorable Speaker. And for women, especially who undergo the problem, it is something that requires attention. Actually, we need to declare it as a national disaster. And it mainly affects young women and middle-aged women. And this is the time that women actually are at their most productive stage. So it is important, as has been indicated by the mover of this particular motion, that more attention is paid to fistula as a disease. And I don't want to belabor on the point that have already been made by my colleagues, but we should subsidize treatment for fistula as a sickness. It brings a lot of, the patients suffer a lot of smelling because of incontinence, both from urine and from feces. And it is a problem and brings about segregation and isolation of the patients. So I want to request, Honorable Speaker, that as my colleagues have contributed, that as a nation we give this seriousness that it deserves. If we take care of our young women, then we are taking care of our nation. If we take care of the treatment of our young women, because the ones who are affected mainly by fistula are from rural areas. And even Rangwe as a constituency in my own area, I have this particular problem, Honorable Speaker. So it is very important that we look at this seriously, and for every sub-county and for every constituency, whoever is volunteering...
Order, Honorable Gogo. What is it, Honorable Leshomo? You seem to have pressed an intervention.
Mr. Speaker, nilikuwa naomba tu nafasi.
No, you are even extinguishing your chance because from the screen you are the next one. But don't cause the speaker to reconsider. But yes, Honorable Gogo.
Yeah, it's important. You see the urgency that Honorable Leshomo wants to make a contribution to it. It's a very, very important motion, Honorable Speaker, for women and for the general public, and even for our male colleagues. This affects all of us, because when it affects a woman, it affects a girl, it affects a mother, it also affects a sister. And before Honorable Leshomo pressed the intervention button, I was just indicating that mainly this happens in the rural areas. And I would honestly make a special appeal to our medical personnel and all that are and the paramedics, that we should have interventions at the sub-county level, at the constituency level. Because when it happens and where it happens, at times it is difficult for affected women to go and do the long distances given their positions to access the treatment. So I would request that as much as it may not be, we may not be able as a country to put specialized medical personnel by way of obstetricians and gynecologists in every sub-county hospital. But it should be, we should have a system that reviews probably on a monthly basis or on a bi-monthly basis, so that we give attention to this particular problem that affects women. Apart from that, I want to emphasize on education, because when this happens, oftentimes the women shy away and they don't want to be assisted and they lock themselves up in the rooms. It is a sickness like any other, and they should come out for help, and I know help is going to be given. And with the many remarks that I have made, Honorable Speaker, thank you. I rise to support. Thank you very much.
Honorable Leshomo.
Ya, asante sana Bwana Spika. Mimi pia naunga mkono hii taarifa kwa sababu Mr. Speaker, ni ukweli katika Kenya tuna shida ya hiyo ugonjwa naitwa nasur. Mr. Speaker, ninaunga mkono kweli tupate madaktari mashinani, kwa sababu ukweli hii mambo ni kali kidogo katika huko chini, kwa sababu pali mingi hawana hospitali, hawana madaktari, hawana clinic ya kuangalia wamama ile shida wanapata. Na shida hiyo ni kubwa, kunafikiri kwa kila pahali. Answa kwa wafugaji, pahali sisi tumetoka, ni shida kubwa sana. Na unaona inakuwa haibu kubwa, mpaka hata unaona kweli wasichana waendi shule. Tukienda kuangalia kwa nini wafiki shule, unaenda kupata hizo mashida ndio ziko. Ukienda kuona wamama pia wakijifungua, unaenda kuangalia mama hakikaa, unakuta makojo anatoka, unakuta kila kitu, unajaribu kuuliza, unajaribu kupeleka hospitali, unaona kwa kweli hakuna daktari ile anaweza kujua ni nini inaendelea. Kwa hivyo mimi pia ninaunga mkono iwe ukweli ni kitu inaweza kuangaliwa zaidi, kwa sababu ni kitu inaumiza na imenyamasiwa kwa muda mrefu. Kwa muda mrefu hii kitu iko na watu wananyamaza. Na unajua pia katika hali ya kina mama ni aibu kwenda kusema ama kwenda kujipitisha nina shida hiyo, na ni kwa sababu ya watu wanaogopa. Na tunaomba ili mashinani iwe madaktari. Tunashukuru hawa madaktari serikali wameitisha kutoka nje. Tunaona sasa wanaelekea mashinani kwenda kuangalia kutibu watu magonjwa tofauti, na ninaomba hiyo pia iwe ni moja ya kwenda kuangalia na ya kwenda kusugumzia. Kwa sababu sana sana tukiona hii mambo naitwa kansa, hawa madaktari wanarudi mashinani kwenda kupima. Na mimi naunga mkono kusema pia hii madaktari wanatembea ndani ya mashinani, waende pia na wajaribu kuuliza wamama ile shida wanapata. Kwa sababu hiyo shida iko aswa wale wamama wanajifungua mara ya kwanza, ndio pia unakuta hiyo shida inasidi katika mashinani. Kwa hivyo mimi naunga mkono na nashukuru dada yangu kwa kuleta hiyo, na tutasingitia kuelimisha wamama wetu na wasichana, ile mtu akiwa na hiyo shida apate kufika hospitali kwa haraka, ili ipate kujulikana, shida yake itatuliwe mara moja. Asante na naunga mkono.
Yes, Honorable Malimo, member for Raisamis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, I also arise to support this motion that requires a specialized training and subsidized cost relating to fistula surgery. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues who spoke before me had actually explained in details what fistula is. Mr. Speaker, having known that it's a condition that affects women and girls due to unattended labor during birth or as a result of maybe rape. Mr. Speaker, I think it is important that we support our women countrywide so that they may be able to have subsidized medical care in all our health facilities. Mr. Speaker, as a matter of fact, a lot of women, as they actually undergo birth in our hospitals, they undergo a lot of labor. And this fistula is also associated with women undergoing labor, that they succumb to this kind of a situation. Mr. Speaker, therefore, because of this suffering that our women are going through, I think it is important that we try to put some measures in place of creating awareness, having awareness programs throughout the country to alleviate suffering of our women. Mr. Speaker, instead of actually subsidized medical care, I think it is better if women across the country, particularly those in the rural areas who succumb to this suffering a lot, other than those who live in the urban areas, it is better if total medical care is given to women, actually, and girls. Mr. Speaker, therefore, with those few remarks, I think our women largely, by far, really suffer a lot, women in this country. And it's for this reason that I think to be able to give women in this country some upper hand, we've come up with, the government of Kenya has given women a special day that is called Mother's Day. I think it is good because we know women actually in this country, mainly, they really succumb to a lot of labor in the house. They are the ones who succumb to cooking food. They are the ones who are looking for firewood in the rural areas. They are the ones who are actually looking for water. And surely, bearing of the children also at home. And with all this load on their back, at least I think it is important that we give our women some care, particularly in a case like now Fistula, which is a rare case, and many women are suffering in silence at home without actually exposing this problem even to health personnel. And the fact that the Honorable Janet has introduced this motion asking for a specialized training in the training institutions, I think it is very important that people who are pursuing that kind of courses, like midwifery, they are given a special training in how to handle women during childbirth. With those few remarks, I stand to support this motion. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Honorable Albert, I'm not sure that it is the government that has given the women the Mother's Day. I heard that statement. You may need to recheck that fact. The Mother's Day must have been given by someone else, but I'm not sure it is the government. But anyway, shall we have Honorable Nyenze, Edith?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this important motion. I also congratulate Honorable Janet for this good motion, which has come in time. I'm just imagining a young girl who has just been married, and then they are supposed to really enjoy their marriage, and they are very excited about it. And then they're exposed to this embarrassing condition. I imagine how such a girl would feel, or even someone who is not married, and then they have this condition and they can't even disclose it. They are embarrassed to even talk about it. They are not confident enough to even share with anyone, because most of the times you find that this one would affect mostly girls who are not even educated. So they are really ashamed about it, and they don't know who to share with, and they can't even disclose to the doctor. So I would even encourage that the nurses and doctors who would be treating such girls or people with these conditions can inquire further, because even when they go to the hospital, they might not disclose the condition. But the good thing is that our Constitution provides that every person has the right to the highest attainable standard of health, which includes the right to health care services, including productive health care, and this also includes people with fistula. So since we now have this one, what I would encourage is that we should actually, we know that prevention is better than cure. So to prevent this fistula is good to ensure that our young people are aware, are made aware, educated on how to understand this condition and other reproductive health conditions, so that when one suffers from such, they will be able to even disclose it instead of keeping it to themselves and suffering in silence. So I've said prevention is better than cure, and to prevent this is good to educate our girls and also young men on how to wait longer before they have children. And this one is trying to aid child marriages and early pregnancies. And this will go a long way in ensuring that this disease does not affect the girls, the young girls, and young mothers. So understanding how to prevent the fistula would actually make sure that even if they get it, they will understand what it is, and they will talk about it, and they will be attended to in good time, because information is power. We know that also rape cases also can also be the causes of such a disease. And this one, our girls should also be assisted, and also the young men, on now to actually try to avoid such things. And treatment in our public hospitals especially should be made free, especially for such reproductive health diseases. Treatment should be made free because mostly this disease affects women in the rural areas, and most of the times these are people who have no money, who have no employment, who have no knowledge. So if treatment is introduced for such diseases free in the public hospitals, and then the nurses and doctors are well conversant with such diseases, then this will go a long way in preventing and also treating fistula disease. With that, Mr. Speaker, I support. Thank you.
Honorable Baride.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise to support this very important motion. And let me first begin by really congratulating Honorable Janet Nangabo for bringing this motion, whose time is due, well overdue, Mr. Speaker. And let me just begin by telling you just how serious this problem is. The World Health Organization calls fistula the single most dramatic aftermath of neglected childbirth. Mr. Speaker, this unfortunate disease is one that affects over 2 million mothers in the world. It is one that 2 to 3 out of every 1,000 childbirths results to fistula. A lot of women are suffering in silence in the villages because it mainly affects women from poor backgrounds in the villages, women and girls, Mr. Speaker. It comes out of obstructed labor, extreme sexual violence, early marriages and childbirth when a girl is not fully formed for birth, for reproduction, and extreme cases of female genital mutilation, Mr. Speaker. As a result, here in Kenya, we are having 3 to 4 women out of every 1,000 deliveries suffering from this disease. And that's a very huge number. And the interventions that we have seen are interventions done especially in places like Kenyatta National Hospital, where about 100 to 200 women go through the surgeries at Kenyatta National Hospital. I'm aware that this has been going on for a while, but if you're talking about 100 to 200 cases being sorted per year, that's just a drop in the ocean, Mr. Speaker. And therefore, I really support this motion and support that we have more training done, because in the whole of this country, there are only 10 surgeons that deal with fistula surgery, Mr. Speaker. And so I hope that we can be able to train more surgeons in the area of fistula and make sure that we save women of this unfortunate condition that brings down their self-esteem, because they can hardly even go to public places, because you have no more control of your bladder, you have no more control of your fecal strength, and therefore it is a disease full of shame. And many women are suffering in silence, Mr. Speaker. So I really hope that once we pass this motion, we can go beyond just passing a motion, that especially the women MPs of this House and also the male MPs, because they know women who are suffering back in their constituencies, we can push for real budgetary allocation for this particular condition in the supplementary budget, so that we can make sure that there is enough money that can be given out even at level 5 hospitals, level 4 hospitals, and we can have these surgeries taking place even at the grassroots level, at the devolved units, Mr. Speaker. With those few remarks, I beg to support.
Honorable Mwambire Kubao.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for giving me an opportunity to contribute to this very important motion. Mr. Speaker, I fully support this motion because it has come during that very right time when we can make considerations in the supplementary budget as proposed by the Honorable Member, Honorable Barire. Mr. Speaker, it has been a very big challenge to very many women, especially in the ASOL areas, and because the government has shown some interest in addressing a number of issues, especially health issues, Mr. Speaker, we have seen the government distributing sanitary towels through the county women MPs. I feel, Mr. Speaker, the government should go an extra mile to invest more in such issues so that at least women can get the right medication, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, very many women are suffering. As young people, or as MP, Mr. Speaker, sometimes it is very difficult for us to extend our contributions to such treatments, but I believe if the government will put more effort, it will be very easy even for the county government, right from level 4 hospitals, to be undertaking such operations so that all those women, periodical, probably in a quarterly basis, since we have very many technicians or professionals who can undertake these operations, at least very many women can get these reliefs, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I support this motion and believe, even after passage, the government will take it very serious so that at least we can get relief in the society. Thank you very much.
Honorable Yusuf Haji.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity. I stand to support, like all the colleagues who have talked the whole morning. I think everybody has supported. And the mood of the House is such that everybody is supporting this motion. That is because of its importance. That is because of the effect that it has within the society. Majority of the women or the men who suffer from this condition are from the poor communities, This is because, as it has been said, a lot of them do not even go to schools, and therefore they go for early marriages, and then they are subjected to these conditions. And since they are the poor lot, treating this condition is very expensive. They might not have the opportunity to get treatment. And also, not only treatment, but they might not even have the knowledge. They might not even know that this is a condition that is treatable or that can be corrected at some stage. So therefore, it is very, very important that at our rural hospitals, rural health centers, and all these, we package some sort of knowledge so that people are aware that this condition can be corrected. This condition can be treated at some level. And I beg that the government or the support of the government to make sure that we have some specialized health personnel who can attend to these conditions, who can go down to the rural areas. We have talked and talked. In this house, we talk so much because it's a talking house, but I think we should go a step ahead and not only talking, as some of my colleagues have just suggested here, that action should be taken. We should ensure that this motion is passed, enacted, and the necessary financial support is given, and it is devolved. Action is devolved further, since health is already devolved, and make sure that it goes to the very rural areas where this is very much required. A lot of colleagues have spoken about this, people with a lot of expertise, like Dr. Akal, like Honorable Sophia. They have a lot of knowledge, and they have told us a lot about this. I don't have to dwell on the details behind and what it causes and all that, but I think I should just stress that it's a very important condition, and therefore we should walk the talk. With that, I support this motion. Thank you.
Before I give to Honorable, what is it, Honorable Jaldesa? You have pressed on an intervention.
Mr. Speaker, judging from the mood of the House, it seems this motion has overwhelming support. I therefore propose you call the mover to respond. Thank you.
Or you know, Honorable Jaldesa, there's a good point of order, but you know, you can't be, you know you spoke on this particular motion. If you had not spoken, I would have considered your request. Now the fact that you had spoken, I will not consider that. And from also the screen, I can tell quite a number of members are still interested in speaking to this. And before I give to Honorable Bui, let me give Honorable Ibrahim, member for Wajir North.
Thank you, Speaker. I think despite the fact that the Honorable Member has spoken on the issue, I need to strongly support her that it is in the mood of the House that members are in support of this motion. Speaker, just to add my voice to the same, I want to agree with the member for Mandera West that this obstetric fistula mostly affects the poor lot in the community, and more so, it affects areas with poor health facilities, areas with unskilled health workers. Speaker, we are talking of high maternal mortality rate in this country, and I can assure you that Mandera County is one of the counties with the highest maternal mortality rate in this country, and one of the factors that is highly contributing to these high maternal rates is obstetric fistula. Speaker, it happens that patients are transported all the way from Banissa to Mandera with poor road network, while a mother will be in labor pain for more than 6 or 7 days. And that will definitely result to maternal deaths and, of course, loss of the newborns. At this era, when we are talking of Vision 2030 and when we are talking of attaining sustainable development goals, it is unfortunate that we are still losing mothers and children as a result of this obstetrics fistula, and hence the need to carry out massive awareness, massive health education, so as to ensure that that we end this fistula. Mr. Speaker, I want to say that we always pass motions, but then this is just urging. I feel that at this juncture, we should be talking of compelling the government to ensure that the necessary financial and human resource allocation is made to health facilities so as to ensure that we do not lose more mothers and more newborn children as a result of this obstetric fistula. Speaker, it is my hope that the ministry concerned and the implementation committee will ensure that they walk the talk, because this is a serious case. Mr. Speaker, we have, members have raised that early marriage, sexual violence, and FGM are some of the factors contributing to this, this obstetric fistula, which is very common in the northern part of Kenya. There is a need to address the factors causing obstetric fistula. We need to address issues of sexual violence. We need to address issues of early marriage. We need to address issues of FGM. And this can only be addressed well if we carry out the necessary health education. And this is cascaded down to the village level. I am aware that this is a function of the national government. We must be in a position to link with the Senate so as to ensure that the county government will be obliged to implement this. Finally, Mr. Speaker, I think we must also uphold the Fistula Day. There is need for us to ensure that hope, healing, and dignity is well upheld, and that way we must have colorful Fistula days so as to inform our community on issues related to Fistula. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honorable Mboi, member for Kathiani.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity to also rise and support this motion by the Honorable Janet that seeks to provide specialized training and subsidized costs relating to fistula surgery. Mr. Speaker, first I want to thank the Honorable Janet for coming up with such a motion, because really she's carrying out a role of representation, because that is what this House is meant for. But Speaker, as we look at this motion, I'm just asking myself that when we got our independence so many years ago, we sought out to fight ignorance, poverty, and disease. And so many years later, we are still here talking about disease, because this is really an issue of disease. And so I'm asking myself, are we winning this fight, or we are still going to continue fighting? I think it is important that we must win the fight against disease as a nation. Our current constitution provides for the highest sustainable standards of health and also free and emergency treatment. Basically, we must enforce what is in our constitution. We must ensure that citizens of this country are getting quality health services. Mr. Speaker, again, one of the pillars by the Jubilee administration, out of the 4 development pillars, is the provision of universal health care. So, Mr. Speaker, it's important that as a House, we support this, because we will be supporting the agenda for development, because if we talk about universal health care, we are talking about provision of health services. We cannot afford to have diseases that are defeating the system. So basically, that is why one of the reasons why I think it is important that we support. Mr. Speaker, it says that we subsidize costs. But when I think about it, I think it's important that if we talk about the acquisition of universal health care, it means that those who can afford it will pay for it, those who cannot will get it for free. That is my understanding. So, Mr. Speaker, I think even the issue of saying subsidized costs, we should remove that and just say let it be provided by the country, because we as a country have a responsibility towards our people. And this, Mr. Speaker, will help us to do away with the following. One, every weekend, members of this House are doing harambes for medical purposes. That will be a thing of the past. And Mr. Speaker, it's important that we also do away with this issue where we have people that are suffering in silence, because the problems they have are problems that they find embarrassing, and so they hide them. So it's important that as we deal with this, we also carry out very serious public awareness so that we can ensure that we remove stigma from some of these, because this is not something that one wishes on themselves. This is a disease like any other, and it is unfortunate that from what I hear from the experts that have spoken before me, that a lot of people actually, because of the stigma, they try to hide it. They don't want it to be exposed. So it's important that we support this, so that as we move forward, when those funds will be available, then we can also carry out very serious public awareness. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for the opportunity. I support.
Well, the Honorable Mohammed Osman, member for Fafi.
Speaker, I wanted to contribute on youth employment earlier, so.
Very well. The Honorable Jeremiah Kione.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for that opportunity to contribute to this motion. And on the onset, Mr. Speaker, let me start by saying that if you notice, this is the 3rd motion that we are discussing, having been introduced in the House by our able women leaders. And I think it goes to underline the importance of having women in positions of leadership, including this House, because it's just the motion ahead of this is the one that was dealing with the establishment of special needs units in every primary school and secondary school that was introduced by Mheshimiwa Mishi Juma Boko. Before that, we had another motion by the MP, I think from Kitui, which was dealing with the trauma care. And these are areas that men would ideally not quite be, they are concerned, but they don't come on top of their heads when they are talking about issues that affect our people. Again, if you go through the motions, you find that women introduce issues related to economic, like the coconut farming and such motions. And it is for that reason that we need to look for ways to ensure that we have the women present across the other leadership positions. Having said that, Mr. Speaker, I think it is important also to note that in the motion, there are 4 issues that have been highlighted. One is that at four deliveries in every 1,000 result in this medical condition that is traumatizing. And it affects 50,000 to 100,000 new cases. We have 50 to 100,000 cases of this condition every year. And that is, again, we are told 7.5% of our patients suffer from the same condition. I think, Mr. Speaker, I mentioned those because those are not small percentages. They are percentages that are worrying. And it is of concern that as a nation we have not gotten to give this issue the attention and perhaps the seriousness that it deserves. So I want to thank the member who has introduced this motion, because even if it is urging the Parliament, the government to provide funds for training, it has helped to bring the issue for discussion. So it is not, all is not lost. Even as discussing here, we are not, it's not a waste of time. It's not, there is something that we gain because the government is also listening. Mr. Speaker, this, like other members have said, is an issue that affects every corner of this country. I come from Nyandarua constituency, and Nyandarua is within Central Province. Many who will listen and hear that the mention of Central Province will give you the false impression that areas in that or communities in that area have developed beyond some basic needs. And Nyandarua is one such area that requires the attention of the government when this comes to fruition. We need specialized persons to deal with the women who are delivering, or persons who may have gone through the gender-based violence. And the good thing is to notice that when we have specialized persons available nearer the rural areas, many of those conditions are treatable and people are able to go back to normal life. That is the most encouraging thing. So when we call upon the government to provide for funds so that this condition is attended to and on time, it is because it is a solution to the embarrassing situation that we find, to the we find women being unable to contribute economically at the community level, at the national level, and even at the home level. And it's for this reason that I support and ask that, like my colleague said, if we can provide some money during the supplementary budget, I think we should do that. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well. The Honorable Odege Mboya, member for Nyatike.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Allow me also to add my voice on the same. But first, let me thank my Honorable Janet for thinking wide. In my own family, I came to learn that one of my stepmothers was avoiding public functions for close to 10 years. Little did I know that the lady was suffering from the same condition. This one made me to be aware that majority of our women who are affected with the condition are not ready to come out in the public and seek medical attention. This is now very important for us as the House to see that the information which is needed, we articulate it up to the lowest level possible and ensure that all our women who are suffering from this kind of condition are made to benefit from the medical facilities we have in the country. My second point in the same is about the capacity of our medical facilities to handle such kind of conditions. You'll agree with me that majority of people who are suffering from this condition are spread all over the country and mostly in the villages. But when you look at the facilities with the ability to treat this kind of condition in our country, they are very limited. So this one is very important to this House. And especially the way we are now getting this motion before us, we need to move further and demand for the country to be able to train enough health workers and be spread all over the country and build the facility capable of managing this kind of condition. On top of that, we need to create awareness centers whereby all our women and ladies who are in this country are allowed to access information so that we don't allow our people to suffer in silence, the way it's currently appearing in our country, where, like me, in my own family, I came to learn that my stepmother had suffered for more than 10 years. So what came to make us to realize there is a problem, the lady was simply avoiding public functions. Little did we know that this lady was suffering this much. But I'm sure there are a number of ladies who are also suffering the same, and they are spread all over the country, and they cannot reach medical facilities where they can be helped. So after strengthening health facilities, we need enough manpower. After the manpower, we need enough resource, which will also make sure that expertise treatment is also well spread all over the country. And at the same time, we need some resource also to create awareness. And this awareness would go up to the lowest level possible so that we don't allow segment of this country to continue suffering when we have a condition which cannot easily be managed in the facilities. I thank you and I support.
The Honorable Kimilu Joshua, member for Kaiti.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for giving me this opportunity to support this important motion. And for one, let me say that, Mr. Speaker, fistula is a very common disease which is affecting our people, Kenyans, our women. Most of them are languishing in the village. They don't know what to do. They have no awareness of it. But it's becoming a very dangerous disease. Mr. Speaker, some of these things we discuss here as members of parliament, it's time we need to take it serious when it comes to some of these issues like a disease like fistula, Mr. Speaker. Because like another disease like HIV and cancer, fistula is a very serious disease, which we need as a country. We need to be serious about it. We need to take it serious. And Mr. Speaker, we also need to give awareness to our people. Because as we are talking here, Mr. Speaker, once you go, like I went to my constituency, and when I was, they were talking about the disease, but the name they were giving it, it's like they don't know what they're talking about. So, Mr. Speaker, we need to give awareness first about the disease. We also need as a government.
The Honorable Member for Kaiti, is it a disease or it's a condition? I thought it's a condition.
What?
It's not really a disease, it's a condition.
Yeah, condition.
It's a condition.
Thank you for correction, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as a government, we need also to establish some clinics for awareness of this condition, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, as you know about this disease, most of the people who are affected, they even fear to come out in the public and explain to the member, to the community about their conditions, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, once we do awareness and also we establish clinics in all the counties in this country, Mr. Speaker, I think this will help the people who are affected, and also it will also help the community to know more about this disease, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I also see if it can be good, Mr. Speaker, we also set aside money and be included in, be added in our NGCDF money, Mr. Speaker. Also, as a member of parliament, we take action in our constituencies, Mr. Speaker, because this is a serious condition and we need to be serious, Mr. Speaker. I take this opportunity to support the motion. Thank you.
Members, it is well within your hands and capacity to make provision for funds to go towards dealing with this. So I hear good contribution there. We shall have the Honorable Kiaria, then after he is done with the Honorable Kiaria, are you? Yes, then we shall have the mover to reply.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And much has been said about this motion that has been presented by the Honorable Member of Parliament, and I'll still take the opportunity to congratulate her on a really good job and a very well thought through motion, which is ultimately a very important motion and also very timely. Mr. Speaker, I shall not even go into the details of the condition because descriptions have been made here. All I need to say is that beyond the physical attributes of this condition, there are some very dehumanizing, emotional, and undignifying effects that come with this condition. And as such, it becomes a matter of national interest. More importantly, Mr. Speaker, is the fact that the numbers are dizzying. The numbers that we're looking at here are very high numbers. And because of that, if not anything else, it becomes an issue that this House needs to apply their minds on. Mr. Speaker, one critical thing that is obviously missing in the wording of this motion is the issue to do with the provision of free health care through insurance cover and especially NHIF. And I was thinking that it would be important, even as this is being looked at further, that we find a way of making sure that there is a special provision within the NHIF cover to make sure that this is covered as a special case as we are pushing for other cases like cancer and liver conditions to be covered in a special way by NHIF. Mr. Speaker, beyond that, I think it is also a good time for this House to revisit this matter of healthcare in this country. We gave ourselves a constitution, and in that constitution, in our common wisdom, we decided that health is going to be one of those functions that we're going to devolve. However, Mr. Speaker, 6 years down the line, we can take stock of how we are conducting affairs of health in this country. And I'd like to say that the picture is bleak. I think it is the right opportunity, Mr. Speaker, for this House to reopen the debate on some of these functions that we devolved, and health being such a critical issue, even appearing as one of the big pillars of the Big Four agenda by His Excellency the President, needs to be revisited. And the discussion that we need to have as a country is whether we were right in devolving health as a function. Because we are seeing the handling of health issues within the counties is to say the least, deplorable. And the people who are suffering are actually our people. And if either Friday or Monday, you will find that most of the cases that members of parliament are having to deal with are issues to do with healthcare. And some of these conditions will require for us to pay for our patients out of pocket. And that is why, Mr. Speaker, I thought it would be a right opportunity, it would be a good time to raise the issue of us reopening the discussion on the decision that we made to devolve healthcare. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, for this opportunity. I appreciate and I support this amazing motion. Thank you very much.
Very good contribution, the Honorable Kiaria. The Honorable Nangabo.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I just want to register my appreciation to my colleagues who have really contributed to this motion. Because, Mr. Speaker, outside there, those people who are really affected, they are very poor people who can
The Constitution of Kenya, Amendment Number 2 Bill, National Assembly Bill
Honorable Chris is not in the house. I'll direct that that business be deferred to the next time that it will be set down. The next order.
Order number 12, motion, declaration of youth unemployment as a national disaster and establishment of a national youth fund.
I also see that the Honorable Oluoch, the member for Madara, is not also in the house. I'll also direct that that business be deferred to the next time that it will be set down. Honorable members, the time being 12:30 p.m., this House stands adjourned till today, Wednesday, the 22nd August 2018 at 2:30 p.m.